The sound of crackling timber and the acrid smell of smoke filled the evening air as Katherine Hayes struggled against the wooden beam that had fallen across her legs, pinning her to the floor of her family's homestead just outside Yankton, South Dakota. It was June of 1878, and the fire that had started from an overturned lantern in the kitchen now consumed the wooden structure with terrifying speed, flames licking up the walls and across the ceiling as she screamed for help with every ounce of strength in her body. She had been 20 years old for only 3 months, and the thought that this might be how her life ended seemed impossibly cruel. Her parents had gone into town for supplies, and she had stayed behind to finish the mending and prepare supper. One careless moment, one knocked lantern, and now she was trapped in what had been her home since childhood, watching it transform into her tomb. The heat was unbearable, searing her skin even from several feet away as the flames danced closer. She could feel her consciousness beginning to slip, the smoke filling her lungs making each breath a struggle. Through the roar of the fire, she thought she heard something, a voice perhaps, calling out. But it seemed so distant, like a dream she could not quite grasp. Then suddenly, through the wall of flame that now blocked the doorway, a figure burst through. Katherine could barely make out his features through the smoke and her tears, but she saw a man, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair matted with sweat, his blue shirt already singed in places. He had a bandana pulled up over his nose and mouth, but his eyes were visible, green and determined, scanning the room until they landed on her. "Hold on," he shouted, his voice rough from the smoke but carrying a note of absolute certainty that somehow cut through her panic. Nathan McCready had been riding back to his small ranch after checking his cattle when he spotted the smoke rising against the twilight sky. Without a second thought, he had spurred his horse into a gallop, covering the distance in minutes. When he arrived and saw the house fully engulfed, heard the screams coming from inside, every instinct told him to be cautious, to wait, to not risk his life. But those screams were from a woman, someone terrified and alone, and Nathan had never been the kind of man who could turn away from someone in need. He crossed the burning room in 4 long strides, the heat so intense it felt like walking into a furnace. His boots crushed burning debris underfoot, embers catching on his clothes. When he reached Katherine, he took in the situation instantly. The beam was heavy, part of the roof structure, but adrenaline and desperation gave him strength he did not know he possessed. "This is going to hurt," he warned her, gripping the beam with both hands. The wood was hot enough to burn his palms, but he ignored the pain, heaving upward with everything he had. The beam shifted, rose a few inches, then a few more. "Pull yourself free," he commanded, his muscles straining, his arms shaking with the effort. Katherine did not hesitate. Despite the pain shooting through her bruised legs, she dragged herself backward, away from the beam. The moment she was clear, Nathan dropped it, and the crash sent up a shower of sparks. He bent down and scooped her up into his arms as if she weighed nothing at all, cradling her against his chest. "Put your face against my shoulder and do not breathe," he instructed, and then he was moving, running back through the inferno. The doorway was completely blocked now, flames forming a solid wall, but he did not slow. He tucked Katherine's head down, turned his shoulder forward, and charged straight through. The heat was indescribable, a physical force that seemed determined to consume them both. Katherine felt the flames touch her dress, felt Nathan's body jerk as fire caught his shirt, but he did not stop, did not slow, just kept running until they were outside, until the cool evening air hit them like a blessing. Nathan did not stop until they were 50 feet from the house, finally setting Katherine down on the grass before dropping to his knees beside her, coughing violently. His shirt was smoking, small flames still eating at the fabric, and Katherine, despite her own pain and shock, reached out and beat at the flames with her hands until they were extinguished. They stayed there for several minutes, both coughing, both gasping for clean air, watching as the house collapsed in on itself with a thunderous crash that sent sparks spiraling up into the darkening sky. Katherine felt tears streaming down her soot-stained cheeks, though whether they were from the smoke or the loss of her home, she could not say. "Thank you," she finally managed, her voice hoarse and barely above a whisper. "You saved my life." Nathan turned to look at her properly for the first time. Even covered in soot and ash, even with her dress torn and singed, even with her auburn hair escaped from its pins and wild around her face, she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Her eyes were a striking hazel, currently red-rimmed from smoke but still bright with life, with gratitude, with something that made his heart skip in a way it never had before. "Could not just ride past," he said simply, then coughed again. "Are you hurt? Your legs?" "Bruised, I think," Katherine said, trying to move them experimentally. Pain shot through her shins and thighs, sharp enough to make her wince, but she could move her toes, could bend her knees. "Nothing broken, I do not think." "That is good," Nathan said, sitting back on his heels. "That is real good." He looked back at the burning house. Was anyone else inside? "No," Katherine assured him quickly. "My parents are in town. They will be devastated when they see this, but at least they are safe. At least I am safe, thanks to you." Nathan nodded, then slowly got to his feet, swaying slightly. Katherine saw the burns on his hands, the angry red marks on his arms where his sleeves had burned away, the singed hair along his forearms. He had hurt himself saving her, had risked his life without hesitation for a stranger. "You are injured," she said, trying to stand herself. Her legs nearly buckled, but Nathan was there instantly, his burned hands gentle as he steadied her. "I am fine," he said, though his jaw was tight with pain. "Burns will heal. Though, you need a doctor. Can you ride?" "I think so," Katherine said, though she was not entirely certain. "But where is your horse?" As if in answer, a large bay gelding came trotting up, reins dragging, eyes rolling white at the smell of smoke but responding to his master's training. Nathan whistled low, and the horse came close enough for him to grab the reins. "Easy, Copper," he murmured, stroking the horse's neck. "Easy now." With surprising gentleness for such a large man, Nathan lifted Katherine up into the saddle, then swung up behind her. She found herself cradled against his chest once more, his arms coming around her to hold the reins, and despite everything that had just happened, despite the pain and the shock and the loss, she felt safe. Completely, utterly safe. "I am Nathan McCready," he said as he turned Copper toward town. "My ranch is about 2 miles south of here." "Katherine Hayes," she replied, her voice still rough. "This was my family's homestead." "I am sorry about your home," Nathan said, and she could hear the sincerity in his voice. "It was just wood and nails," Katherine said, though her heart ached at the loss. "I am alive because of you. That is what matters." They rode in silence for a while, the steady rhythm of Copper's gait surprisingly soothing. Katherine found herself becoming increasingly aware of Nathan's presence, of the solid warmth of his body behind hers, of the way his arms created a protective circle around her. She could feel his heart beating against her back, could hear his breathing gradually returning to normal. "That was the bravest thing I have ever seen," she said quietly, "running into a burning building like that." "Was not brave," Nathan said, "was just necessary. Could not let you die in there." "Most men would have," Katherine said. "Most men would have said it was too dangerous, that there was nothing to be done." "Then most men are cowards," Nathan said simply. Begging your pardon for the language, Katherine found herself smiling despite everything. There was something so straightforward about this man, so honest and unpretentious. In a world where most men she knew were full of bluster and false bravado, Nathan's quiet strength was like a revelation. The ride into Yankton took about 40 minutes, and by the time they arrived, full darkness had fallen. The town was small but growing, benefiting from its position on the Missouri River and the recent arrival of the railroad. Gas lamps lit the main street, casting pools of yellow light across the dusty road. Several people turned to stare as Nathan rode through with Katherine in his arms, both of them looking like they had barely survived a war. "Doc Harrison," Nathan called out to a man standing outside the general store. "Where can I find him?" "His office is just down the street," the man replied, pointing. "But what in heaven's name happened to you too?" "Fire," Nathan said shortly, not slowing. "The Hayes homestead." News traveled fast in a small town, and by the time Nathan reached the doctor's office, a small crowd had gathered. The doctor himself, a middle-aged man with gray hair and a kind face, was already opening his door, having heard the commotion. Bring her in," Doc Harrison said, ushering them inside. "Lay her on the examination table." Nathan carried Katherine into the office and set her down gently on the padded table, stepping back reluctantly. Now that they were in the light, she could see him properly for the first time. He was perhaps 24 or 25, with strong, angular features, a straight nose, and a firm jaw darkened by stubble. His dark brown hair was curly and currently wild from the smoke and heat, and his green eyes were striking against his tanned, soot-stained skin. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with the broad shoulders and muscled build of a man who worked hard for his living. "You are hurt too," Katherine said, reaching out toward him before the doctor gently pushed her hand back down. "Let me examine you first, Miss Hayes," Doc Harrison said. "Then I will take a look at our hero here." "I am fine," Nathan protested, but the doctor gave him a look that brooked no argument. "Sit down and wait your turn, young man. You have got burns that need tending." Nathan did as he was told, sinking into a chair against the wall while the doctor examined Katherine. Her legs were indeed badly bruised, already turning purple in places, but nothing was broken. She had minor burns on her arms and hands, and her lungs were irritated from the smoke, but overall, she had been incredibly lucky. "You will need to stay off those legs for a few days," Doc Harrison told her. "And I want you to come back if you have any trouble breathing, any chest pain." Smoke inhalation can be dangerous even after the fact. "I understand," Katherine said. "Thank you, doctor." "Now then," Doc Harrison said, turning to Nathan, "let me see those hands." Nathan held out his hands and Katherine gasped at the sight of them in the full light. His palms were angry red, already beginning to blister where he had gripped the burning beam. The doctor examined them carefully, then began applying a salve that made Nathan wince despite his efforts to remain stoic. "You are lucky you did not lose the use of these," Doc Harrison said seriously. "These are bad burns, son. You need to keep them clean and bandaged, and you cannot work with your hands for at least a week, maybe 2. "Cannot do that," Nathan said immediately. "I've got a ranch to run, cattle to tend." "Then you will make these worse, possibly permanently," the doctor said firmly. "You need someone to do the work you cannot do while you heal." "I will help," Katherine said immediately. Both men turned to look at her. "You saved my life." "The least I can do is help you keep your ranch running while you recover." "You need to rest your legs," Nathan protested. "And you have got your own family to worry about. Your parents will be back soon, wondering where you are." "My parents will understand," Katherine said firmly. "And my legs will be fine in a day or 2. Please let me do this. I owe you my life." "You do not owe me anything," Nathan said, his voice rough with emotion. "I did what any decent person would do." "But not many people would have done it," Katherine insisted. "Please, let me help you." Nathan looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his green eyes. Finally, he nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "If you are sure." "I am sure," Katherine said, and she was surprised by how much she meant it. The thought of parting ways with this man, of never seeing him again, sent a strange pang through her chest. She told herself it was just gratitude, just the natural attachment that came from someone saving your life, but deep down, she knew it was more than that. The doctor finished bandaging Nathan's hands and the burns on his arms, then gave them both strict instructions about care and recovery. As they prepared to leave, the door burst open and Katherine's parents rushed in, her mother pale with worry, her father looking grim. "Katherine," her mother cried, rushing to embrace her daughter. "We saw the house, the smoke. We feared." "I am all right, Mama," Katherine said, hugging her mother tightly. "I am all right because of him." She gestured to Nathan, who had risen to his feet, looking uncomfortable with the attention. Katherine's father, Robert Hayes, was a stern man, tall and weathered from years of farming, but tears shone in his eyes as he crossed to Nathan and gripped his shoulder. "You saved my daughter's life," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I do not have words to thank you properly." "No thanks needed, sir," Nathan said. "I am just glad I was riding past when it happened." "Providence," Katherine's mother, Margaret, said softly. "God sent you to save our girl." Nathan looked uncomfortable with this assessment but did not argue. Robert Hayes was studying him carefully, taking in his honest face, his straightforward manner, the way his eyes kept drifting back to Katherine. "What is your name, son?" Robert asked. "Nathan McCready, sir." "I have got a small ranch south of here, about 2 miles from your place. Cattle mostly, some horses." "McCready," Robert repeated thoughtfully. "I have heard that name. You are the young man who bought the old Henderson property about a year ago, are you not?" "Yes, sir," Nathan confirmed. "Been working to build it up, make something of it. And doing a fine job from what I hear," Robert said. "You are known as an honest man, a hard worker." He paused, then said, "My daughter tells me she wants to help you while you recover from your injuries." Normally, I would say that was not proper. A young, unmarried woman staying at a bachelor's ranch, but given the circumstances, given what you did for her, I think we can make an exception. "My wife and I will stay in town for the time being anyway at the boarding house, while we figure out what to do about rebuilding." "Papa," Katherine said, surprised. She had expected more resistance. "You are alive because of this man," Robert said simply. "That is a debt that goes beyond propriety, beyond convention. If you want to help him, I will not stand in your way." He turned back to Nathan. "But I expect you to treat my daughter with respect and honor, young man." "Of course, sir," Nathan said immediately. "You have my word." "She will be safe with me." "I know she will," Robert said. "Otherwise, she would not be going." And so it was decided. Katherine spent that night at the boarding house with her parents, sleeping fitfully, her dreams filled with smoke and flames and a pair of steady green eyes. The next morning, despite her mother's worried protests, she gathered a few borrowed clothes and supplies and met Nathan at the edge of town. He was waiting with Copper, and a sturdy wagon hitched to a second horse, a mare he introduced as Daisy. His hands were freshly bandaged and he looked tired, but he smiled when he saw Katherine approaching. "Morning," he said. "Are you certain about this? It is not too late to change your mind." "I am certain," Katherine said firmly. "Now help me up into this wagon before my legs decide they do not want to cooperate." Nathan chuckled and offered her his bandaged hand, then winced. Katherine took his elbow instead and climbed up into the wagon seat, trying not to show how much her legs were hurting. Nathan climbed up beside her and took the reins, clicking his tongue to get the horses moving. The ride to Nathan's ranch was beautiful in the morning light. The South Dakota landscape stretched out around them, rolling prairie dotted with wildflowers, the sky vast and blue overhead. They passed several other homesteads, fields of wheat and corn beginning to show green cattle grazing peacefully. "It is lovely out here," Katherine said, breathing in the clean air. "I have lived near Yankton all my life, but I do not think I have ever really looked at it before, not like this." "Nearly dying has a way of making you appreciate things," Nathan said quietly. "After the war, I saw every sunrise as a gift." "You were in the war?" Katherine asked, then felt foolish. Of course he had been. Most men his age had fought in the Civil War, which had ended just 13 years ago. "Tail end of it," Nathan said. "I was only 16 when I enlisted, lied about my age, saw some fighting in the last year at Petersburg and Appomattox. It was not glorious like they say, just horrible and sad." He was quiet for a moment. "Lost a lot of friends. Came out here afterward because I could not stand to be back east anymore, too many memories. Wanted to start fresh, build something of my own." "I am sorry," Katherine said softly. "That must have been terrible." "It was," Nathan acknowledged. "But it is in the past now. I try not to dwell on it." He glanced at her. "What about you? Have you always lived in Yankton?" "Born and raised," Katherine confirmed. "My parents came out here in 1858, just after I was born. They wanted to make a new life, away from the crowding back east. It has not always been easy, especially during the war years, but it is home, or it was." Her voice caught slightly on the last words. "You will rebuild," Nathan said with certainty. "Your father seems like a determined man." "He is," Katherine agreed, "and so is my mother. They will not let a fire stop them." She paused, then asked, "What about your family? Are they back east?" Nathan's jaw tightened slightly. "Parents died when I was young, before the war. Fever took them both within a week of each other. My older brother raised me until I enlisted. He died at Gettysburg." "Oh, Nathan," Katherine breathed. "I am so sorry. Like I said, it is in the past," Nathan said, but she could hear the old pain in his voice. "I have made my own family now, I suppose. Copper and Daisy, a few good neighbors, the cattle. It is enough." But there was something lonely in the way he said it, something that made Katherine's heart ache for him. This brave, strong man who had risked his life for a stranger, who worked hard to build something of his own, who had lost so much already. He deserved more than just horses and cattle for family. He deserved someone to come home to, someone to share his life with. She was surprised by the intensity of her feelings, by how much she already cared about this man she had known for less than a day. But there was something about him, something solid and true, that called to something deep inside her. Perhaps it was the trauma they had shared, the bond that formed between someone who saves a life and someone whose life is saved. Or perhaps it was something more, something neither of them quite understood yet. Nathan's ranch, when they arrived, was modest but well maintained. There was a small house, freshly painted white, a barn, a corral with several horses, and fields where cattle grazed contentedly. Everything spoke of hard work and care, of a man who took pride in what he was building. "It is not much," Nathan said as he helped Katherine down from the wagon, "but it is mine. Well, mine and the bank's for another few years." "It is wonderful," Katherine said honestly. "You have done so much in just a year." "Had some help from neighbors at the start," Nathan admitted. "People out here look after each other. When you are new, they help you get established, and then you help the next person. That is how it works." He showed her around, pointing out the various outbuildings, introducing her to the horses in the corral. There were 5 of them, including Copper and Daisy, all sturdy, well cared for animals. The cattle, about 30 head, were grazing in a large pasture beyond the barn. They need to be checked daily, Nathan explained. Make sure none have wandered off, none are hurt or sick. The horses need feeding and watering, stalls need mucking out. There is fence that needs mending on the east pasture, firewood to chop, water to haul. He looked frustrated. All things I cannot do with these hands. Then I will do them, Katherine said simply. Show me what needs doing and I will do it. You are a farmer's daughter, not a ranch hand, Nathan protested. I am both now, Katherine said with a smile. I grew up working on my parents' homestead. I can muck a stall, mend a fence, chop wood. Maybe not as fast as you, but I can do it. Nathan looked at her for a long moment, then slowly smiled back. All right then, partner, he said. Let us get you settled and then I will show you around properly. The house inside was small but tidy, with a main room that served as kitchen and living area, a bedroom that Nathan gave to Katherine despite her protests, and a small loft where Nathan said he would sleep. The furniture was simple but well made, and there were small touches that showed this was a home, not just a place to sleep. A quilt on the bed, curtains on the windows, books on a shelf by the fireplace. Did you make all this? Katherine asked, running her hand over the smooth wood of the table. The furniture, yes, Nathan said. Learned woodworking from my brother. The quilt and curtains were gifts from Mrs. Anderson, a neighbor. She said a house needed a woman's touch, even if there was not a woman living in it. Katherine felt an unexpected pang at the thought of some other woman providing those homey touches, then scolded herself. She had no claim on this man, no right to feel jealous. That was kind of her, she said aloud. She is a good woman, Nathan agreed. Her husband helped me put up the barn. I owe a lot to folks like them. Over the next few days, Katherine threw herself into the work of the ranch with a determination that both impressed and worried Nathan. Despite her bruised legs, she was up before dawn, feeding the horses, checking the cattle, hauling water from the well. Nathan tried to help where he could, but with his hands bandaged and painful, there was little he could do beyond giving instructions and moral support. You are going to hurt yourself, he warned her on the third day, watching her struggle with a bag of feed. Let me at least try to help with that. You will tear open those burns, Katherine said firmly. Sit down and let me work. I am fine. But she was not fine, not really. Her legs ached constantly, her muscles screamed from the unfamiliar labor, and her lungs still felt tight and strange from the smoke. She refused to show it, though, refused to give Nathan any reason to send her away. The truth was, she was not ready to leave, was not ready to part from him. With each day that passed, she found herself more drawn to him, more fascinated by the man he was. He was unfailingly kind, patient with her when she made mistakes, generous with his praise when she did something right. He told her stories about his cattle, giving each one a name and personality. He read to her in the evenings from his small collection of books, his voice deep and soothing. He made her laugh with dry observations about their neighbors and gentle teasing about her stubborn insistence on doing everything herself. And slowly, Katherine began to see other sides of him. The way he was gentle with animals, always speaking softly, never using force when patience would do. The way he noticed small things, a flower blooming, a bird's nest in the barn rafters, the way the light fell across the prairie at sunset. The way he sometimes looked sad when he thought she was not watching, a deep melancholy that spoke of old wounds and loneliness. She found herself wanting to ease that sadness, to bring light to those dark moments. She started making his favorite foods, learned from casual questions what he liked. She told him stories about growing up in Yankton, made him laugh with tales of childhood misadventures. She sat with him on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun go down, not talking, just being present. Nathan, for his part, was falling in love, though he tried hard not to acknowledge it. Katherine was unlike any woman he had ever known. She was strong and capable, never complaining, never shrinking from hard work. But she was also soft and kind, tending to the animals with gentle hands, bringing wildflowers into the house to brighten it, humming while she worked. She was smart, asking insightful questions about the ranch, making suggestions that were often better than his own plans. And she was beautiful. He tried not to notice, tried to maintain proper distance, but it was impossible. The way the morning sun caught in her auburn hair, turning it to flame. The way her hazel eyes sparkled when she laughed. The way she bit her lower lip when she was concentrating on something. The graceful line of her neck, the curve of her smile, the sound of her voice saying his name. He told himself it was wrong to feel this way, that she was here out of gratitude, nothing more. That as soon as his hands healed, she would return to her parents and her own life, and he would be alone again. But the heart does not listen to logic, and with each passing day, Nathan found it harder to imagine his life without Katherine in it. On the 7th day, Doc Harrison came out to check on them both. He removed Nathan's bandages carefully, examining the healing burns with a critical eye. "You are healing well," he pronounced. "Better than I expected, honestly. You must have been staying off these hands like I told you." "Katherine has been doing all the work," Nathan admitted. "I have barely lifted a finger." "Good," the doctor said. "Keep it that way for at least another week. These are still tender and you do not want to tear the new skin." He turned to Katherine. "And how are you, Miss Hayes? Any breathing problems?" "None," Katherine assured him. "My legs are much better too, barely hurt at all now." "Let me see them," Doc Harrison said, and after a moment's hesitation, Katherine rolled up her skirt to show her shins. The bruises had faded from deep purple to a yellowish green, still ugly but clearly healing. "Good, good," the doctor said approvingly. "You are both doing well. Keep up whatever you are doing." After he left, there was a strange tension between Nathan and Katherine. They both knew that her injuries were essentially healed, that there was no medical reason for her to stay anymore. But neither of them wanted to bring it up, neither wanted to be the one to suggest she should leave. Finally, that evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Nathan spoke. "Your legs are healed," he said quietly, "and I am getting better. You have done more than enough to repay any debt you think you owe. If you want to go back to your parents, I understand." Katherine felt her heart clench painfully in her chest. "Is that what you want?" she asked, keeping her voice carefully neutral. "For me to leave?" "No," Nathan said immediately, then seemed surprised by his own vehemence. "No, that is not what I want. But it is not about what I want. You have your own life, your own family. I cannot ask you to stay here indefinitely, working yourself to exhaustion on my behalf. What if I want to stay?" Katherine asked softly. "What if I am not ready to leave?" Nathan turned to look at her, and the expression on his face made her breath catch. There was hope there, and longing, and something that looked very much like love. "Why would you want to stay?" he asked, his voice rough. "This is not your life, your dream. This is just a small ranch in the middle of nowhere, belonging to a man you barely know." "I know you," Katherine said, turning to face him fully. "Maybe I have only known you for a week, but I know you better than I have known men I have known my whole life. I know you are brave and kind and gentle. I know you work hard and care for your animals and keep your word. I know you have been lonely, and I know you try to hide it, but I see it anyway." She paused, gathering her courage. "And I know that I do not want to leave, that the thought of going back to town and not seeing you every day makes my heart hurt in a way I do not fully understand." Nathan stared at her, his green eyes wide with shock and something that might have been wonder. "Katherine," he said, and her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" "I am saying that I care for you," Katherine said, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "I am saying that I want to stay if you will have me. Not as a hired hand, not out of gratitude, but as someone who wants to be part of your life, part of your dream." For a long moment, Nathan said nothing, just looked at her as if he could not quite believe she was real. Then, slowly, carefully, mindful of his healing hands, he reached out and cupped her face with his bandaged palm. "I have been falling in love with you since the moment I saw you in that burning house," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Fighting it, telling myself it was foolish, that you could not possibly feel the same way. But if you do, if you really do, then I would be honored to have you stay. Not just as someone who works here, but as my partner, my companion, as the woman I love." "Nathan," Katherine breathed, and then his lips were on hers, gentle and sweet and filled with all the longing they had both been holding back. She kissed him back, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling his heart pounding beneath her palms. The kiss was careful, almost chaste, but it held a promise of more, of a future they could build together. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "We should do this properly," he said. "I should talk to your father, ask for permission to court you." "You saved my life," Katherine said with a smile. "I think my father will approve." "Still," Nathan insisted, "I want to do right by you, by your family. You deserve that." And so the next morning, they rode back into Yankton together, hand in hand. Robert Hayes was supervising the clearing of the burned homestead site, preparing to rebuild when they arrived. He took one look at their joined hands, at the way they stood close together, and a slow smile spread across his weathered face. "I wondered how long it would take," he said. "Your mother bet me it would be less than 2 weeks. Looks like she won." "Sir," Nathan said formally, "I would like permission to court your daughter, with the intention of asking for her hand in marriage." "You have my permission and my blessing," Robert said immediately. "Any man brave enough to run through fire to save my daughter is brave enough to deserve her." He paused, his expression becoming more serious. "But I will hold you to your word, young man. You treat her right, honor her, provide for her. Can you do that?" "I will spend every day of my life trying to be worthy of her," Nathan said solemnly. "That is my promise to you." Margaret Hayes, when she heard the news, wept happy tears and embraced them both. "I knew," she said. "I knew the moment I saw you two together that this was meant to be. God brought you to save her, but he also brought you together for something more." The courtship that followed was everything a courtship should be. Nathan rode into town every Sunday after church to have dinner with Katherine and her parents at the boarding house. They went on long walks along the river, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's dreams and fears and hopes. Nathan took Katherine to the summer social, and they danced together under the stars while the whole town watched approvingly. He brought her wildflowers from the prairie, and she made him cookies and pies. He taught her to ride better, and she helped him choose fabrics for new curtains for the house. They went to barn raisings and church suppers together, becoming a familiar sight in the community. The brave cowboy and the woman he had saved, clearly devoted to each other. 3 months after the fire, on a beautiful September evening, Nathan took Katherine back to his ranch and led her to the top of a small hill overlooking the property. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange and pink, and the prairie stretched out endlessly around them. "I love this view," Nathan said, his arm around Katherine's waist. "This is where I first stood when I was deciding whether to buy this place. I looked out at all this land, all this possibility, and I thought about the life I could build here. But it always felt incomplete somehow, like something was missing. He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. His burns had healed completely, leaving only faint scars across his palms, marks that Katherine often traced with her fingers. "And then I met you," he continued, "and I realized what was missing. It was not the land or the house or the cattle. It was someone to share it all with, someone to build that life alongside. It was you, Katherine. It has always been you." He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Katherine's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a simple gold band with a small but beautiful diamond. "It is not much," Nathan said, suddenly nervous. "But it is honest work that paid for it, and it comes with all my love. Katherine Hayes, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my everything?" "Yes," Katherine said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Nathan slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, passionately, holding nothing back. And as the sun set behind them, painting the world in colors of fire that no longer held terror for either of them, Katherine knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. They were married 6 weeks later in late October, in the small church in Yankton. The whole town turned out for the wedding, eager to celebrate the couple whose love story had already become local legend. Katherine wore a simple white dress that her mother had made, and Nathan wore his best suit, his dark hair combed back, his green eyes shining with happiness as he watched his bride walk down the aisle toward him. Robert Hayes gave his daughter away with tears in his eyes, placing her hand in Nathan's with a father's blessing. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, their vows spoken with voices that shook with emotion. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan kissed Katherine as if she were the most precious thing in the world, and the church erupted in applause and cheers. The reception was held at the newly rebuilt Hayes homestead, which had risen from the ashes stronger than before. There was music and dancing and more food than anyone could possibly eat. Doc Harrison gave a toast about how he had known they would end up together from the moment he treated them. Mrs. Anderson, Nathan's neighbor, cried happy tears and told Katherine she was getting the best man in the territory. As the evening wore on and the guests began to depart, Nathan and Katherine climbed into a decorated wagon and rode back to their ranch, their home, together as husband and wife. The moon was full and bright, lighting their way, and the night air was crisp and cool, smelling of autumn and possibility. "Happy, Mrs. McCready?" Nathan asked, his arm around his wife. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Katherine replied, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Sometimes I think about that night, about how terrified I was, how certain I was that I was going to die. And then you came through those flames like an angel and everything changed." "I think we both got saved that night," Nathan said softly. "I was alive, but I was not really living. Just going through the motions, building something but not knowing why. You gave me purpose, gave me someone to build a life for, not just a ranch." They made love for the first time that night in the small house that was now their home. Tender and passionate, and full of all the love they had been holding back during their courtship. Nathan was gentle with Katherine, mindful of her inexperience, and she responded to him with a passion that surprised them both. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, speaking in whispers, making plans for their future. "I want children," Katherine said. "Lots of them, filling this house with noise and laughter." "I want that too," Nathan agreed. "A son to help with the ranch, maybe a daughter with your beautiful eyes." "Or a daughter to help with the ranch," Katherine said with a smile. "I have proven I can do the work." "That you have," Nathan agreed, kissing her forehead. "Our children will be lucky to have you as a mother, teaching them to be strong and brave and kind." The months that followed their marriage were full of hard work and happiness. Nathan and Katherine worked side by side to build up the ranch, expanding the herd, improving the land. Katherine proved herself to be an excellent ranch wife, not just helping with the animals and the land, but managing the household accounts, trading shrewdly at the market, making connections in town that brought new opportunities. Nathan's respect for his wife grew daily. She was not content to simply keep house while he did the outside work. She rode out with him to check the cattle, helped him mend fences, even assisted with the difficult births when the calving season came. But she also made their house a home, filling it with warmth and light and love. She planted a vegetable garden and tended it carefully. She sewed curtains and quilts, cooked hearty meals, kept everything clean and organized. Their neighbors noticed the change in Nathan, how he smiled more readily now, how the loneliness that had always shadowed him was gone. The McCready ranch prospered in a way it had not before, and everyone attributed it to the partnership between husband and wife, each bringing their own strengths to build something greater than either could have built alone. In the spring of 1879, Katherine discovered she was pregnant. She told Nathan one evening after supper, watching his face carefully to gauge his reaction. For a moment he just stared at her, his green eyes wide with shock. Then a smile spread across his face, so full of joy and wonder that it took her breath away. "A baby," he said, his voice full of awe. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Katherine asked, though she could see the answer written clearly on his face. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Nathan said, pulling her into his arms. "You have given me everything, Katherine. A home, a purpose, a love I never thought I would find, and now a child, a family of our own." His voice broke slightly. "I never thought I would have this, never thought I deserved it." "You deserve all of it and more," Katherine said fiercely. "You are the best man I have ever known, Nathan McCready, and you are going to be a wonderful father." The pregnancy was not easy. Katherine suffered from terrible morning sickness in the early months, and as she grew larger, the work of the ranch became increasingly difficult. Nathan worried constantly, tried to make her rest more, but Katherine was stubborn, insisting on doing her share until Nathan finally put his foot down and hired a young man from town to help with the heavy work. In December of 1879, on a cold night with snow falling softly outside, Katherine went into labor. Nathan rode hard to fetch Doc Harrison and Mrs. Anderson, who had agreed to assist with the birth. The labor was long and difficult, lasting nearly 20 hours, and Nathan paced frantically outside the bedroom door, terrified by his wife's cries of pain, feeling helpless and afraid. But finally, just as dawn was breaking, he heard a different sound, the thin, reedy cry of a newborn. Doc Harrison opened the door, smiling broadly. "You have a son," he said, "a big, healthy boy, and your wife is doing fine, tired but fine." Nathan rushed into the room, his eyes immediately finding Katherine. She looked exhausted, her hair damp with sweat, her face pale, but she was smiling, and in her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. Nathan approached slowly, almost reverently, looking down at his son for the first time. The baby was red-faced and wrinkled, with a shock of dark hair and tiny, perfect fingers that were currently curled into fists. As Nathan watched, the baby's eyes opened, revealing eyes that were already turning the same green as his father's. "He is perfect," Nathan whispered, reaching out to touch his son's cheek with one gentle finger. "He is absolutely perfect. Would you like to hold him?" Katherine asked, and Nathan nodded, unable to speak. She carefully transferred the baby into his father's arms, and Nathan held his son for the first time, looking down at the tiny life he and Katherine had created together. "We need to name him," Katherine said softly. They had discussed names during the pregnancy, but now, looking at his son, Nathan knew what felt right. "Samuel," he said, "after my brother, if that is all right with you." "Samuel McCready," Katherine said, trying out the name. "I like it. It is strong like his father." Little Samuel McCready proved to be a healthy, vigorous baby with a strong set of lungs. He kept his parents up many nights with his crying, but neither Nathan nor Katherine minded. They were both completely besotted with their son, taking turns walking him, singing to him, marveling at every tiny thing he did. As Samuel grew, thriving under the love and care of his parents, the McCready Ranch continued to prosper. Nathan expanded the cattle operation, and Katherine started raising chickens and selling eggs in town, adding to their income. They hired additional help during busy seasons, and Nathan's reputation as a fair and honest rancher spread throughout the region. Samuel's first word was "Papa," and Nathan thought his heart might burst with pride. Katherine pretended to be offended that "Mama" came second, but she was just as delighted. They celebrated Samuel's first birthday with a small party, inviting Katherine's parents and several neighbors. Robert and Margaret Hayes doted on their grandson, visiting often, thrilled to see their daughter so happy and settled. When Samuel was 2 years old, Katherine became pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, and in the spring of 1882, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl. They named her Alice, and she proved to be as different from her brother as night from day. Where Samuel had been loud and demanding, Alice was quiet and observant, watching the world with serious hazel eyes that reminded Nathan of Katherine. Nathan discovered he was just as capable of being tender with a daughter as he had been with a son. He carried Alice everywhere, talked to her constantly, and was wrapped completely around her tiny finger from the moment she was born. Katherine watched her strong, capable husband become completely undone by their daughter's smile, and loved him even more for it. The McCready family settled into a comfortable rhythm. Nathan and Katherine worked together to run the ranch, their partnership as strong as ever. Samuel grew into a boisterous, adventurous boy who followed his father everywhere, already showing an interest in the cattle and horses. Alice was quieter but no less determined, and she showed early signs of having her mother's head for numbers and organization. On a warm summer evening in 1885, Nathan and Katherine sat on their porch, watching Samuel, now 6, teach 4-year-old Alice how to feed the chickens. Samuel was being very serious and important about it, and Alice was listening intently, occasionally asking questions in her soft, clear voice. "Can you believe it has been 7 years since the fire?" Katherine asked, leaning against Nathan's shoulder. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday," Nathan admitted. "I can still remember exactly how I felt when I saw you trapped in that house, when I realized you might die. The absolute terror, and then the determination that I would not let that happen." "My hero," Katherine said softly, taking his hand and lacing their fingers together. She traced the faint scars on his palm, the lasting marks of that night. "These scars are part of our story, part of what brought us together." "Best scars I ever earned," Nathan said, kissing her hand. "I would do it again in a heartbeat. I would walk through any fire for you, Katherine." "I know you would," Katherine said, "but hopefully there will be no more fires. Just this life we have built, this family, this love." "Just this," Nathan agreed, pulling her closer. "It is more than I ever dreamed of having." As the sun set over the prairie, painting the sky in those familiar shades of gold and orange, the McCready family stood together, whole and happy and deeply loved. Samuel ran up to the porch, Alice toddling after him, both children chattering about the baby chicks they had just seen hatch. Nathan scooped up Alice while Katherine hugged Samuel, and for a moment they stood there, the 4 of them together, a perfect picture of the family they had become. This was what Nathan had run through flames for, what Katherine had nearly died to find. Not just love between husband and wife, but this complete, beautiful life they had built together from the ashes of that terrible night. The years continued to pass, bringing new challenges and new joys. There were hard winters and dry summers, times when money was tight and worry kept them up at night. But there were also good harvests and successful cattle sales, neighbors helping neighbors, and the deep satisfaction of work well done. Through it all, Nathan and Katherine faced everything together, their love and partnership never wavering. Samuel grew into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, with the same quiet integrity and work ethic. He took over more and more of the ranch work as Nathan aged, proving himself to be a natural cattleman. Alice surprised everyone by developing a passion for horses, training them with a patience and skill that impressed even the most experienced ranchers in the area. In 1895, on their 17th wedding anniversary, Nathan and Katherine took a rare day off from the ranch to ride out to the hill where he had proposed. They were both older now, their hair touched with gray, their faces lined from years of sun and wind and hard work. But when Nathan looked at his wife, he still saw the beautiful young woman he had carried from the flames, and Katherine still saw the hero who had risked everything to save her. 17 years, Katherine marveled, sitting close to Nathan on the blanket they had spread on the hilltop. Sometimes it feels impossible that it has been that long. Other times, I cannot remember my life before you. I cannot imagine my life without you, Nathan said simply. You are as necessary to me as breathing, Katherine. You always have been. Do you ever think about that night? Katherine asked. About how different things could have been. If you had not been riding past at that exact moment, if you had not been brave enough to run in. I try not to, Nathan admitted. It is too terrible to contemplate, but sometimes late at night I wake up and I think about it. About how close I came to never knowing you, never having this life, this family, and I thank God for putting me on that road at that exact time. I thank him too, Katherine said softly. And I thank you, Nathan, for being brave enough, strong enough to save me, for giving me this beautiful life. You gave me this life, Nathan corrected. I was just existing before you, just going through the motions. You showed me what it means to truly live, to love, to have something worth fighting for. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. From this vantage point, they could see their ranch spread out below them. The house expanded over the years to accommodate their growing family, the barns and outbuildings they had added, the herds grazing peacefully in the fields. It was a far cry from the small, lonely place Nathan had bought all those years ago. Our children are grown now, Katherine said eventually. Samuel is courting that nice girl from town, the banker's daughter. I would not be surprised if we have a wedding to plan soon. And Alice has half the young men in the county trying to court her, Nathan added with a smile. Though she does not seem interested in any of them, too busy with her horses. She will find someone when the time is right, Katherine said confidently. Someone worthy of her, someone who appreciates her strength and independence. Like I found you, Nathan said, kissing her temple. Or like you found me, I am still not sure which it was. Both, Katherine said decidedly. We found each other at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right way. As they rode back to the ranch in the gathering twilight, they saw lamplight already glowing in the windows of their home. Samuel and Alice were inside, preparing supper, waiting for their parents to return. It was a scene of such ordinary domestic happiness that it made Nathan's throat tight with emotion. This was what he had built, what he and Katherine had created together from nothing more than a chance encounter, and a desperate act of bravery. A home, a family, a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. His brother would have been proud, Nathan thought. His parents would have been proud. But more than that, Nathan was proud. Proud of the life he had built, proud of the man he had become, proud of the family he and Katherine had raised together. Every scar, every hardship, every moment of doubt or fear had been worth it to arrive at this place, this moment, this life. Katherine seemed to sense his thoughts, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "I love you, Nathan McCready," she said simply. "I love you too, Katherine McCready," he replied. "Today, tomorrow, and always." They rode the last stretch home in the deepening darkness, their way lit by the stars above and the warm glow of lamplight ahead. Together, as they had been for 17 years, and would be for all the years to come. The fire that had brought them together was long since extinguished, but the flame of their love burned as brightly as ever, warming everyone who came near it. Samuel married his sweetheart in 1896, and within 2 years, Nathan and Katherine were grandparents to a sturdy grandson they named Nathan Jr. After the grandfather who had built the ranch, they would all inherit. Alice eventually met her match in a quiet horse trainer from Montana, who understood her passion and independence, marrying him in 1899 in a beautiful ceremony on the ranch. As the new century dawned in 1900, Nathan and Katherine, now in their 40s, looked back on the life they had built together with satisfaction and joy. The McCready Ranch was thriving, passed down to Samuel and his growing family, while Alice and her husband had started their own horse breeding operation on adjacent land. The Hayes and McCready families had become pillars of the Yankton community, known for their integrity, generosity, and the deep love that bound them together. On quiet evenings, Nathan and Katherine would sit on their porch, watching the sun set over the prairie they both loved, their hands clasped together. They would talk about the early days, about the fire that had brought them together, about all the moments big and small that had shaped their lives. They would talk about their children and grandchildren, about their hopes and dreams for the future. And sometimes, when the light was just right and the flames of sunset painted the sky, Nathan would look at Katherine and see her as she had been that night, young and frightened but so very brave. And Katherine would look at Nathan and see her hero, the man who had run through flames to save her, who had given her everything she had ever wanted and more. Their love story became a legend in Yankton, passed down through generations. People would point out the McCready Ranch and tell the tale of the brave cowboy who saved his future wife from a burning house, of the love that had grown from that desperate moment, of the family and legacy they had built together. It became the standard against which all other love stories were measured, a reminder that sometimes, from the darkest moments, the brightest lights can emerge. Nathan McCready and Katherine Hayes McCready lived long, full lives surrounded by the family they had created and the love they had nurtured for decades. When they finally passed, many years later, within months of each other as if neither could bear to be without the other for long, they left behind a legacy of courage, love, and dedication that continued to inspire everyone who knew their story. The ranch they had built together thrived for generations, passed down from parent to child, each generation adding their own chapter to the McCready story. But always at the heart of it was the tale of that summer night in 1878 when a cowboy ran through flames to save a woman trapped in a burning house, and in doing so, found the love that would define both their lives forever.